Melanie, thank you very much for your time. It's really exciting to see somebody who's got such a bold vision that grew so well. So congrats and thanks again for joining us. Mine was what you talked about with the employee onboarding. So how you talked a lot about kind of having your true north. What did the process look like when you guys were like 3, 4, or 5, and how have you adapted that to stay true to your mission now that you're over 1,000?
Yeah. So some things that we've done when we onboard new new team members is we always take them through our investor deck. And so my co-founder Cliff and I, we sit down and we actually run through our investor deck every single time. In the early days, that was obviously a one-on-one coffee. Nowadays, it's like we have 20 or 30 people now, literally now on a Zoom call. And I guess, but I trying to embed them in your culture and your vision and get them up to speed as quickly as you can is really critical. Now we actually have a whole team that works on the onboarding experience, and so they come in and they have an onboarding boot camp and they go and speak to different specialties and they have little projects and tasks, and we try to help build them build their confidence and their skills in their specialty and getting them to know all of the different things that we do. We then have a little graduation ceremony for them. So now it's like quite a process. In the early days, it was certainly like you just kind of came in and had to learn a lot of things on the fly.
So sorry, when you say you show people your investor deck, you mean the deck that you pitched your most recent venture round with? That's the deck that new employees review?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So one of my favorite quotes is, happiness is when what you do, what you say, and what you think are all in harmony. And I kind of feel like that with our investor deck. Like when you're telling investors the same thing you're telling your team members, the same thing that you're telling the press. Obviously the press get a little bit more of an obfuscated view. I think that's a really good thing because it means that we're all working in the same direction.
It's a really novel. I've never heard that. I'm curious if any of the founders want to put in the chat, does anyone else do this? I've never heard this before. It's kind of an interesting tactic. A lot of founders, of course, talk about transparency, but it's not always lived. So Ferris from Circadia is doing it. That's great. Does that spirit of transparency extend in more ways throughout the company, Melanie? Like, are board decks shared with all employees, full financials, compensation?
We did a full company board deck reading last time we had a board meeting. So we actually, when we're going through our board deck, we often are talking about different areas of the company. And so we actually had the team read that. I guess like that's what we're doing when we're doing our sit downs, when we're doing our season openers, is trying to give everyone as much context as they possibly can so they can make the best decisions possible. And I think that's, really critical part of our company is Canva is despite its simplicity, it's a very complicated engine behind the scenes. And so trying to ensure that everyone has as much context as they possibly can is really critical.